I was thinking about whether or not I wanted to make this kind of video, but you know what? I was like, I don't know. I mean, it's on Spectors Hockey, and I really like this idea over here, so hey, even though it's 2 straight Canucks videos, why not talk about the Calgary Flames? So, today we're going over what was a recent edition of Spectors Hockey. Link in the description, as always, to these resources. But earlier in the week, it was TSN's Frank Saravalli who reported the Calgary Flames are currently in the market for a right-wing player. They would like to move Elias Lindholm from the top line to center on the second line, which would create a need to replace him on the right side on that first line. They've tried several players in that role this season, but they have not found the right fit. Spector's note, which is the part that I'm actually pulling from here and talking about, says that Saravalli recently listed Detroit's Bobby Ryan and Vancouver's Jake Virtanen on his updated trade bait list. Both are affordable, but Ryan would be the better option if the Flames seek a rental player. Kyle Palmieri of the New Jersey Devils could be a better one if New Jersey becomes sellers at the trade deadline. So, that's our topic right here. Calgary, right-wingers, they need them. And talking about 2 guys from 2 teams that I cheer for here that could satisfy those conditions. Jake Virtanen 1, Bobby Ryan 2. We could touch on Palmieri a little bit, I guess, but we'll probably save that for the very end because I'm talking about 2 guys on 2 teams that are 2 of my favorite teams in the NHL. So, Calgary. Interesting position they're in right now where Elias Lindholm is a guy who has just been so valuable this season. He was the guy that was able to facilitate that power play for a good part to start off the year. His right side shot on the right side opened up so many passing lanes, shooting lanes, and just space in general. He's a really smart player, really good guy on the ice to keep track of. I remember when he had his breakout year in like 2016 or whatever, and I had him in my hockey pool. From that point on, I was always intrigued and impressed with whatever it was Elias Lindholm did, either with the Hurricanes or with the Flames, but the fact is he can play center too, so moving him down from line number 1 to line number 2, opening up that number 1 right side spot, is a very interesting position to find yourselves in. The Calgary Flames are currently one of the worst teams in the North Division. I mean, there's only 7 teams in the division, but they're just outside the playoff picture with the Montreal Canadiens slipping and sliding down a little bit more. But the Flames are in a position where they might actually be super desperate to make that final push and to get that last asset that could help them over the hump and take over the Montreal Canadiens' 4th place spot. Now, just the way the divisions are going out right now, I would be surprised if one of Edmonton, Winnipeg, or Toronto did not make the playoffs just because of the lead they have on teams 4, 5, 6, and 7 in the North. So, it's just that fight for the 4th spot, I would think, that is the most significant here, and Calgary is very well a part of that. So, right wings that could be targets over here, Jake Virtanen from Vancouver, Bobby Ryan from Detroit. Let's go over Virtanen first, because I said in yesterday's Tanner Pearson video that I didn't want to make another Virtanen trade video because the guy had a really good game the previous night, and he had 2 goals against Toronto, and he did what McDavid and Draisaitl could not, which made him better than those 2. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic, but Jake Virtanen's a really interesting option over here, but one that I wouldn't really see as too likely. Now, yes, it was indeed his name that was put as one of the top guys for right-wingers on TSN's trade bait list, and as a result, there's a connection here because Frank Saravalli's a TSN guy talking about right wings that the Calgary Flames need. But Jake Virtanen has already been in a really peculiar spot because we've noted that other teams, the Anaheim Ducks per se, really do not want to go after this kind of guy without balancing the scales financially, because Jake Virtanen does have a $2 million AAV for 2 seasons. The last season is going to be next year. So there's another added year of cash to that contract, which is why a trade for like Danton Heinen, for example, in Anaheim wouldn't really work 1-for-1 because Danton Heinen expires this year. Teams don't want the extra year of the contract. So for the Calgary Flames, if you really want to get a trade done with Jake Virtanen, you're going to have to, at the very least, give up an asset that probably would balance out the scales financially. And that's only assuming the Flames would have the same concerns that the Ducks would. If the Flames don't care and they'll take on an extra year, that, hey, be my guest, let's get a nice top draft pick for Shotgun Jake. But it would be really interesting seeing Jake Virtanen on the top line with the Calgary Flames, mostly because Jake Virtanen has had success in Calgary before. He played for the Calgary Hitmen in his WHL days where he was an absolute monster. Like, oh my gosh, this guy was like the best version of himself every single night. The Jake Virtanen we saw against Toronto the other day, yeah, that was Jake Virtanen every night pretty much when he was with the Calgary Hitmen in the WHL. And I get that it's a lot easier to be good in the WHL when you're a big physical specimen like Jake Virtanen was back then. It's difficult in the NHL because everybody's good in the NHL. But having Jake Virtanen on that first line with Johnny Gaudreau and Sean Monahan, honestly, I think it would be a slight improvement over Josh Levo if you're able to get the best out of Jake, and that's the only issue here. The consistency with Jake Virtanen hasn't really been the strongest over his career, so having a guy like this who sometimes will not really backcheck all too well, or sometimes wouldn't really facilitate play in the offensive zone all too well, sometimes would make weird decisions with the puck in the offensive zone, I don't know if it's really worth the risk to have this guy as a top-line winger with Gaudreau and Monahan. Now I get he's still young, he's still got a lot of time, and he's still got a lot of growth to go through, but it's been like this for years with Jake Virtanen, which is why for Canucks fans it's been super disappointing seeing how Ehlers and Pasternak and William Nylander are all doing, especially since Pasternak was taken after Jared McCann as well in that 2014 draft. Yeah, it doesn't feel bad at all. But for Jake Virtanen, it would be an interesting experiment. If you're able to get the best out of this guy, it would be great. Let's go over Bobby Ryan, though, because I wanted to talk about Detroit as well. Detroit's in a lot more of a just kicked back. They've got their feet up on the desk, just kind of chilling, smoking a cigar, and tapping the ashes into the ashtray on the side while reading an old-fashioned newspaper. They're just kind of like chilled out because Bobby Ryan's a guy whom we've spoken about it before. He's kind of expecting to get traded. And he's been in a position where, hey, he's a veteran in this league. He knows what it takes to be good, but in a year where he's making $1 million, he doesn't have another year on this contract, and he's out here as a very good leadership guy who knows how to actually get points this year. He's meshing really well with the young guys of Detroit, and even though Detroit is one of the worst teams in the league, he's still out there getting it done, especially after what was a very big personal battle that he had when he was with the Ottawa Senators and then he got bought out. We all kind of know the story of Bobby Ryan. But for me personally, I actually would be a lot more confident if I was the Calgary Flames, going after Bobby Ryan for my top-line right-wing spot instead of Jake Virtanen. Bobby Ryan this year has been great, but he has been playing on the Red Wings, so you could debate whether or not there's more to untap with Bobby Ryan as a player today if he was just playing with a better team. And even though Calgary is in their own fight for their lives for the playoffs this year, they're a lot better than Detroit this year on paper, I would think. So having a Bobby Ryan as a first-line right wing would be a really interesting experiment, especially since the consequences of a James Neal or a Milan Lucic where you're stuck with a big contract that's expensive doesn't exist with Bobby Ryan. He's 1 year, he's $1 million, he's cheap. If it doesn't work out, boom. You wait till the offseason, he goes back to Detroit, all is good. Plus, I think Detroit would just be a lot more easy to deal with in terms of a draft pick because I think Steve Yzerman is kind of a lot more relaxed when it comes to potential trades, and he's a lot more liberal too. Jim Benning rarely makes trades nowadays, which is very unfortunate to see, but you know what? Hey, he does his own thing, that's his style. For Steve Yzerman, he's probably a lot more willing to accept whatever it is the Calgary Flames could give for a guy like Bobby Ryan. Because, hey, I mean, he was an expiring asset too. He could either just come back in the offseason or re-sign or whatever, and you can still keep a draft pick because, you know, free assets are better than nothing. So, for Bobby Ryan, I would actually think that he's a lot more of the more valuable trade idea in this scenario if the Calgary Flames are looking to buy. But of course, you also have Kyle Palmieri on the New Jersey Devils. That's another one. We haven't even touched on that in this video. The Devils are a little bit down there in the standings, not really doing all too great on paper, but the team is looking good, the young guys are looking good, and that's kind of all you wanted in New Jersey. So, if it's a Kyle Palmieri dangling in the trade block as well, who knows if the Flames could go out there and get that kind of guy. He's also expiring this year, just like Bobby Ryan, but he's got a 4.6 AAV, so there's a little bit more money there, but you know what? It is in the last year of his contract, so I'd say it's probably a lot more easy to deal with as a contract than Jake Virtanen, because Virtanen does have that extra year, but Kyle Palmieri is indeed let's just say, more established asset today, because he was at 45 points last year, 50 the year before that. He's at half a point a game right now, 9 points, 18 games played, but the Devils are kind of struggling, so who knows how exactly that's going to go down. But talk to me in the comments if you're a Flames fan, what you think about these ideas here. The return of Calgary's Jake Virtanen, Bobby Ryan, the veteran coming back to play, or Kyle Palmieri from the New Jersey Devils. Let me know in the comments what you think about each of these guys potentially for your hockey team. I hope you enjoyed this video. Trolls 99, and bye.